Hello, baby. Tonight, let's snuggle into your soft blanket and drift gently into a dreamy land where magic sparkles in every petal and whispers ride the wind. We're going to visit a quiet lily pond nestled deep within an emerald forest where a curious little frog lives under the moonlight. This isn't just any frog, oh no. It's the frog prince of the quiet lily pond. He's kind, gentle, and oh so lonely, waiting patiently for someone special to hear his story. With glowing fireflies, sweet singing crickets, and floating blossoms like soft pillows on the water, we'll begin our gentle tale. Once upon a time, in the heart of a whispering green forest, there was a pond so still and calm that the stars could see their reflections twinkling in it every night. The pond was shaped like a sleepy crescent moon and surrounded by lily pads so large that even a squirrel could nap on them. Birds often sang lullabies from the branches of the willows that wept into the water, and every evening a golden mist would rise and dance above the surface, kissed by the setting sun. In this peaceful, magical place lived a little frog named Thistle. His skin was a soft, mossy green, and his eyes shimmered like polished amber stones. Thistle wasn't like the other frogs. While his brothers leaped and splashed and croaked as loud as they could, Thistle liked to sit very still and listen. He would listen to the wind humming in the cattails, the fish bubbling softly below, and the tiniest rustle of dragonfly wings fluttering by. But most of all, Thistle listened to his own heart. It beat gently and slowly, and inside it, there lived a secret. You see, Thistle wasn't just a frog. Long ago, he had been a prince, a real one, with a crown made of starlight and a castle that floated on the clouds. But that was before the spell. No one quite remembered how it happened. Only that one twilight, when Thistle was just a small boy prince, he had wandered too far from his palace, chasing a butterfly with wings the color of dreams. He stumbled upon an old willow tree whose bark whispered riddles and roots curled like lazy snakes. And beneath that tree sat an old woman with eyes the color of the pond. She had smiled gently and told the prince a secret truth. And then, poof! In a shimmer of moonlight and magic, he was no longer a boy, but a frog with tiny webbed toes and a soft, croaky voice. The spell was not cruel, but it was patient. You must wait, the old woman had said, her voice like a lullaby. Wait with kindness, wait with stillness, wait with love in your heart. Only then shall you be found, and only then shall you return. And so Thistle waited. Day by day, night by night, through seasons that sang in different colors, he waited. He helped lost ducklings find their way back to their mothers. He sang soft songs to the moon when the stars blinked sleepily above. He watched over the lily pads like a tiny guardian, keeping bugs from biting the sleepy blossoms. He never forgot who he was, but he never hurried either. The other animals of the forest loved Thistle, though none knew his secret. To them, he was the gentle frog, the one who always knew where the wind was going or when the rain would fall. The fireflies danced extra bright around him, and the turtles brought him stories from the far edges of the pond. One evening, just as the first stars began to peek out from behind the velvet sky, a new sound came floating through the air. It was soft at first, like the flutter of a butterfly's wing, but it grew clearer with each breath the wind took. It was humming. Not bird humming, not bee buzzing, but a human girl's humming, gentle and warm like sunshine through lace curtains. Thistle's amber eyes blinked slowly. He tilted his head toward the sound and sat still as the reflection of the moon. The humming came closer, one note at a time, weaving through the reeds like a ribbon on the breeze. And then he saw her. She stepped through the tall grasses, barefoot and careful, her dress trailing like a whisper behind her. She had soft curls the color of ripe wheat and eyes wide with wonder, like she had stepped out of a dream and into the forest. Her name was Lily. Lily had wandered far from the village, farther than she meant to. But something had called her, like a soft bell ringing in her heart. She didn't know what it was, only that she had to follow. When she saw the pond, she gasped. "Oh, how beautiful," she whispered. She knelt beside the water, her fingers brushing the surface gently, and Thistle felt his heart skip, not like a frog's hop, but like a memory fluttering its wings. He watched her. She didn't scream. She didn't splash. She didn't try to catch any frogs or chase the dragonflies. She just sat very still with a calm smile on her face. Then she began to sing. It was the same song he had heard in the wind, the one that had drawn her here. Her voice was like honey in bedtime stories, and the stars above seemed to listen closer. Thistle didn't know what to do. Should he croak? Leave? Instead, he whispered a tiny ribbit. Lily looked around. Who's there? He ribbited again, a bit louder this time. Her eyes found him. Oh, hello, little frog. Thistle's heart fluttered. She had heard him. Lily smiled, the corners of her mouth turning up like the sun rising slowly over the hills. She leaned forward. You look like someone who has a story. Thistle blinked once, twice. He did. And just maybe, she would be the one to hear it. The fireflies blinked a little brighter. The moon cast a silvery hush over the pond, and something deep inside the old magic stirred, like a yawn waking from a very long nap. The night held its breath, and Thistle, the frog prince of the quiet lily pond, felt the beginning of something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Lily sat quietly beside the pond, her toes just touching the cool water, sending tiny ripples across the surface. The moonlight wrapped around her like a silver blanket, and the gentle rustle of leaves made her feel safe, as if the forest was watching over her. Thistle, the little frog with the amber eyes, stayed hidden behind a lily pad, watching her with a curious heart. He had seen many people come and go through the woods, children chasing butterflies, grown-ups picking herbs, but none like her, none who sat so still, none who listened so deeply. Her voice still echoed softly in the air like the last note of a lullaby. Do you live here? Lily asked, speaking into the quiet. Thistle croaked again, a tiny sound like a secret shared. Lily giggled softly. I guess you do. You look very wise, you know, maybe even magical. Thistle's eyes blinked slowly. Her words shimmered like sunlight through water. Lily reached into the small pouch at her side and pulled out a single sugarberry, round and red like a glowing bead. Would you like one? She asked, placing it gently on a flat rock beside the water. She didn't move to grab him or poke him like others might. She simply sat there, legs crossed, her chin resting in her hands, waiting. Thistle, curious but cautious, hopped forward just a little. He sniffed the berry, then nudged it closer to himself. Lily smiled wide. See? I knew you were brave. Thistle croaked in agreement and gave a tiny hop of gratitude. He wanted to speak, to tell her everything, that he was once a prince, that he was under a spell, that her voice had awakened something. But the words stayed deep in his throat like tadpoles too shy to swim. Instead, he listened as Lily began to hum again. It was a soft tune, the kind that wrapped around the heart and rocked it gently. She sang about stars and dreams, about meadows full of whispering flowers and skies painted with pink clouds. Then, as the night grew deeper, Lily told the frog a story. My grandma used to say that every pond has a secret, she whispered, her voice barely louder than the breeze. She said that if you listen very carefully, the water will tell you things, stories of long ago and of magic still waiting to be found. Thistle leaned in, completely still. I think, Lily said, that this pond is the kind with magic thing. It feels different, softer, like it remembers things. Thistle nodded just a little, and the pond gave a tiny splash, as if agreeing with her. Then something surprising happened. One of the lily pads began to glow. It wasn't bright, not enough to scare, but just enough to catch their attention. A soft golden light pulsed from its center, like a heartbeat made of moonlight. Lily gasped softly, her eyes wide. Did you see that? Thistle blinked. He had never seen the pond do that before. The lily pad glowed again, and a soft chime echoed through the water, like a bell underwater. Lily stood up slowly, stepping toward the glowing lily pad. She knelt beside it and touched its edge with the tip of her finger. The light rippled outward in soft circles, and for a moment, everything in the forest went still. The crickets paused, the breeze hushed, even the owls held their hoots, and then the lily pad whispered. Lily's eyes widened. She didn't hear words exactly, but feelings, warmth, wonder, and something else, longing, like a dream that had been forgotten for too long. She turned to Thistle. There really is magic here, isn't there? Thistle gave a slow, solemn nod. Lily sat back down, her mind dancing with questions. Have you always lived here? She asked gently. Do you have a name? Thistle hesitated. Then, with a great effort, he tapped a tiny pebble near the water. It was a special pebble, smooth and oval-shaped, one he had often looked at while remembering who he used to be. He pushed it toward her with his nose. Lily picked it up. Is this important? Thistle nodded. She held it close, then pressed it to her heart. "I'm going to call you Thistle," she said, "because you're small and quiet but strong and kind. Is that okay?" Thistle's little throat croaked happily. For a long while, they sat together. Lily talked, and Thistle listened, his heart growing lighter with every word she spoke. She told him about her village, about her tiny room with a window that looked out at the hills, and about how sometimes, when the world felt too loud, she would come into the woods just to breathe. "You don't feel too loud," she said. "You feel just right." As dawn's first light began to stretch across the trees, the pond shimmered again. A breeze swept through the reeds, and a single silver feather floated down from the sky, landing gently beside Lily. She picked it up and smiled. "I think I'll come visit you again," she whispered. "If that's all right." Thistle gave a hopeful ribbit. She laughed softly, placing the feather in her pouch along with the pebble. "Good. Then I'll come tomorrow." With one last glance at the glowing lily pad, now slowly dimming with the light of morning, Lily stood up and began walking back toward the edge of the woods. Thistle watched her go, a quiet joy bubbling inside him like the gentle stirrings of a spring. The spell had not broken, not yet, but something had changed. For the first time in years, someone had seen him, not just the frog on the lily pad, but the prince hidden inside. And deep in the pond, where the water was oldest and the magic slept beneath curled roots and forgotten stones, a tiny light began to glow, waiting. The morning sun peeked gently through the leaves of the forest, casting soft golden patches on the mossy floor. The pond, now quiet once more, sparkled in the early light like a sea of tiny stars. Thistle remained on his favorite lily pad, his amber eyes half closed, not from sleep, but from dreaming while awake. His heart was still humming with the memory of Lily, her voice, her laughter, the way she looked at him like she truly saw him. All day, Thistle waited. He watched the dragonflies dart and dance over the water. He listened to the turtles tell slow stories about the old days, and he helped a baby duckling find its mother near the cattails. But through it all, his thoughts floated toward the edge of the forest where Lily had disappeared. By the time the sun began to dip once more, painting the pond in hues of rose and honey, a gentle rustle in the reeds made Thistle sit up a little taller. And then he saw her. Lily stepped through the green curtain of leaves, carrying a small woven basket and wearing a crown of daisies that made her look like a forest princess. She beamed when she saw him. "Hello again, Thistle." Thistle gave a happy croak and hopped forward, his heart thumping with quiet joy. "I brought something," Lily said, settling onto the same mossy patch by the water's edge. She opened her basket and pulled out a small loaf of sweet berry bread, a tiny cup of wildflower tea, and a book bound in soft, worn leather. "I thought we could have a little picnic," she explained, laying the items out carefully, "and maybe I could read you a story." Thistle blinked slowly and sat as close as he could without falling into the water. The scent of the berry bread drifted over and it reminded him of something: warm kitchens, laughter, and a time long ago when he had hands instead of webbed feet. Lily broke off a tiny piece of the bread and placed it on a leaf for him. "It's my grandma's recipe," she said. "She used to say it was made with kindness, and that made it taste sweeter." Thistle nibbled the crumb, and indeed, it was the sweetest thing he had tasted in a very long time. Then Lily opened her book. She began to read in a soft, dreamy voice that rose and fell like a lullaby. The story was about a brave little mouse who set off on an adventure to find a lost melody, hidden deep within the forest. As she read, Thistle could almost hear the melody playing, carried by the breeze and wrapped in birdsong. The pond listened too. The ripples grew still, the dragonflies landed gently on the reeds, and even the leaves above seemed to hush their rustling to hear her better. When she finished the story, Lily closed the book with a gentle sigh. "I always liked that one," she said. "It makes me feel like anything is possible, even magic." Thistle's eyes glimmered. He wanted so badly to tell her that magic was real, that it lived in this very pond, that he was proof of it, but the spell still held his voice like a forgotten key. Instead, he did something he had never done before. He gently nudged the pebble she had named him with back toward her, then used his little foot to trace a slow, careful swirl in the soft mud beside it. Lily leaned closer. "You're writing something?" Thistle continued, drawing a circle and then a line beneath it, trying to shape the letters he remembered from long ago. His movements were clumsy, but they carried purpose. Lily gasped softly. "That looks like a letter P." He paused, then slowly tried to write another shape. It was shaky, but it resembled an R. "P, R," Lily murmured. "Are you trying to spell something? Your real name?" Thistle gave the smallest nod. Lily's eyes sparkled. "You are special, aren't you?" She looked out over the pond, her gaze thoughtful. "Do you know? When I was very little, my grandma told me a bedtime story about a prince who was turned into a frog and had to wait by a magical pond until someone with a kind heart found him." She turned back to him, her voice barely a whisper. "Was that you?" Thistle blinked once, slowly. She smiled. "I think it was." That night, Lily stayed longer than she had planned. She told him more stories, this time from her own life. The time she found a nest of baby sparrows and watched over them until they flew away, or when she stayed up late during a storm just to make sure the wind didn't blow away the flowers on her windowsill. And the more she shared, the more the pond seemed to lean in. The glowing lily pad returned, pulsing softly beneath the water's surface. The golden mist rose again, swirling gently around them. As the stars returned to their places in the sky, Lily leaned back and sighed. "This is the most magical place I've ever known," she said. "And you're the most magical frog I've ever met." Thistle's heart thudded, not from excitement, but from the warmth of being known, really known, for the first time in so long. Before she left, Lily reached into her pouch and took out the silver feather she had found the night before. She tied it carefully to a strand of grass near Thistle's favorite lily pad. "So I can always find my way back," she whispered. And then she placed her hand gently on the stone she had named him with. "I'll come again tomorrow," she said, her voice tender and full of promise. "There's still more stories to share." Thistle watched her disappear into the trees once more, the silver moonlight brushing her shoulders as she went. He turned toward the glowing lily pad, which shimmered a little brighter than before. Deep below the pond, in the oldest roots of the oldest tree, the magic stirred again, not fully awake, but listening. The third morning after Lily first came to the pond was warm and sweet, with the scent of blooming honeysuckle drifting through the trees. Birds chirped soft, happy melodies, and the clouds above floated like giant feathers in a baby blue sky. Thistle had barely moved from his lily pad all night. Though he hadn't closed his eyes, he had rested deeply, wrapped in the memory of Lily's voice, her stories, and the way her eyes lit up when she looked at him. He had never felt so awake inside. All around the pond, little creatures had begun to notice something was different. The elder turtle, whose shell was covered in mossy spirals, climbed slowly up onto a sunny rock beside the water and peered toward Thistle. "You've been glowing lately, little frog," the turtle murmured with a knowing smile. Thistle gave a soft ribbit, but didn't take his eyes off the trees. He was waiting, and just as the shadows began to stretch long and golden again, the sound of footsteps whispered through the underbrush. She had come. Lily appeared like a daydream stepping through the trees, her dress dusted with petals and her basket swinging gently at her side. She walked as if the forest was singing to her, and perhaps, in its own quiet way, it was. "Hello again, Thistle," she called softly, her voice gentle as ever. Thistle hopped once in greeting, his little heart drumming in quiet delight. "I brought something special today," she said, sitting down and lifting the cloth from her basket. Inside was a tiny wooden flute, carved simply but lovingly, with tiny flowers etched along its sides. "This belonged to my grandma," Lily explained. She said it held the sound of peace inside it. She lifted it to her lips and began to play. The sound that drifted out was soft and lilting, like a lullaby for the trees. It danced over the pond and through the reeds, curling through the cattails and floating up to the canopy above. Birds quieted to listen, and a squirrel paused mid-climb to hear more. Even the breeze seemed to hush. Thistle closed his eyes. It reminded him of lullabies from the Cloud Palace, of music that filled the halls where he once laughed and danced. The melody was not loud or proud. It was gentle, a whisper of home, a kiss of memory. It stirred something deep in the pond, something ancient and patient. When Lily finished, she smiled shyly. "I don't play it very often, but today felt right." The glowing lily pad shimmered more brightly than ever, casting soft golden reflections across the water. Thistle hopped closer, eyes full of wonder. "I think this pond remembers your music," Lily whispered, her fingers still touching the flute. "I think it's been waiting for it." Thistle croaked softly, then turned and made his way to a nearby patch of smooth mud beside the stone she always touched. With careful little strokes, he began to draw again. This time he formed the letters P-I. Lily leaned forward, breath catching. "Prince?" Thistle stopped, blinking slowly. "You're a prince?" she asked, her voice full of wonder. He nodded gently. Lily sat back, her eyes wide and soft. "A real prince, just like in the stories." She looked around the pond, at the shimmering lily pad, at the golden mist that had begun to rise again, and then back at Thistle. "Were you turned into a frog?" Thistle gave a slow, solemn nod. She put a hand to her heart. "That's why you're different. That's why you know how to listen." The pond rippled gently as if sighing in agreement. Lily looked thoughtful, then spoke in a hush. "Do you know how to break the spell?" Thistle didn't move. He only stared at her, amber eyes deep with feeling. The truth was he didn't know. The old woman's words from long ago had faded like fog. All he remembered was, "Wait with kindness, wait with stillness, wait with love in your heart." Lily placed her hand on the stone again, the one she'd named him with, and whispered, "Then I'll wait with you." Thistle's throat tightened. Lily leaned back and watched the sky shift into dusk. "I think you're not the only one who's been waiting," she said softly. "Sometimes I feel like I've been waiting too, even if I didn't know for what." They sat together, quiet and close. The glowing lily pad pulsed like a heartbeat. A breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of jasmine and the quiet song of distant owls. Then Lily tilted her head. "I wonder if there's more to this pond than anyone knows." She dipped her fingers into the water, letting it ripple around her hand. As she did, a ring of soft light circled out from her fingertips, making the surface gleam like morning dew. The fireflies returned, blinking in soft rhythms around her hair. Thistle watched, awe blooming in his chest. The forest was responding to her, just as it once had to him. "You're special too," he croaked softly, the words lost in air but carried in meaning. That night, Lily pulled a small cloth from her basket, unfolded it, and revealed something very old, a pendant shaped like a teardrop of crystal. "My grandmother gave me this before she passed," she said. "She said it belonged to a queen once from a place above the clouds." Thistle's breath caught. Clouds. A castle. A queen. It was his mother's pendant, the one he remembered gently tucked into her dress when she kissed his forehead goodnight. Lily looked at it, then at him. "It's yours, isn't it?" Thistle nodded slowly, a single tear glimmering in his eye. Lily gently placed the pendant beside him on the lily pad. "Then it's found its way back." As night deepened, stars scattered across the sky like sugar on velvet. The crystal pendant shimmered with quiet magic, and the glowing lily pad lit the pond like a lantern in the dark. Something was beginning. Something slow, something gentle, something true. And Thistle, for the first time in years, began to believe again, not just in magic, but in the promise of becoming who he truly was. The next morning, the pond was quieter than usual, as if it were holding its breath. The dragonflies hovered low and still. The reeds stood tall and unmoving. Even the birds sang in softer tones, their songs more like sighs than melodies. The whole forest seemed to sense that something important was happening, something delicate, like the first petal of a blossom slowly opening to the sun. Thistle hadn't slept at all. The crystal pendant still rested on the edge of his lily pad, glinting softly in the early light. He had stared at it for hours, remembering. He remembered his mother's soft voice as she tucked him in at night, the way she pressed the pendant to her heart before placing it gently on his. He remembered the floating palace with its cloud gardens and the music that filled the halls like a breeze full of laughter. He remembered chasing that dream-colored butterfly and hearing the riddle under the willow. And now the pendant was here, resting beside him once more, as if time had folded itself gently to bring it back. When Lily returned later that day, she was different too. She wore the same crown of daisies, though now it had a few fresh violets tucked into it. In her hands, she carried a satchel full of hand-drawn pages, sketches of the pond, of Thistle, of the glowing lily pad. She had spent the whole night drawing, needing to capture every detail before it slipped away like a dream. "Hello, Thistle," she said with a smile that reached all the way to her eyes. Thistle gave a gentle croak in return, and she sat beside him, her presence as calming as ever. "I brought my drawings," she said, spreading the pages out on a soft patch of moss. "Look, this one's you, sitting with the pendant, and this one is the glowing lily pad. And here," she pointed to a small corner sketch, "is the moment the light rippled when I touched the water." Thistle studied them, one by one. They were soft and simple, but filled with wonder. She had drawn him not as a silly frog, but as something noble, something seen. In every line was care, and in every corner, love. "I was thinking," Lily said quietly, "that maybe this magic doesn't just live in the water. Maybe it lives in memories, in stories, in promises." She reached into her satchel and pulled out a tiny jar filled with dandelion fluff. "Wishes," she whispered. "Grandma said if you collect enough of them, they start to listen." Thistle watched as she carefully untied the lid and let the fluff float free. The tiny seeds caught the light, swirling like whispers above the pond. The glowing lily pad brightened, casting golden patterns across the water. "I wish," Lily whispered into the breeze, "that your story finds its way home." At that moment, a small swirl of water bubbled near the center of the pond. The mist began to rise again, thicker this time, curling around the reeds like silver ribbons. The pendant on the lily pad shimmered softly, then blinked once like a sleepy eye opening. Lily gasped, "Did you see that?" Thistle hopped back slightly, his eyes wide. The pendant pulsed with a golden light, not harsh or dazzling, but gentle, like the glow of a lantern in the fog. It cast long shadows across the water, and something in the air shifted. The breeze grew warmer, carrying a scent like sugar and stars. And then the water spoke. Not in words, but in sound. A melody soft and slow, like the flute Lily had played, only deeper. It rang like chimes underwater, filling the pond with music only hearts could hear. Lily reached out slowly and placed her hand over the pendant. The moment her fingers touched it, the glowing lily pad flared gently beneath her. Light danced around her shoulders like feathers, and the trees leaned closer, their branches creaking softly in a lullaby rhythm. Thistle watched, his chest full of something bigger than breath. He knew this magic. It was ancient and kind. Not the sort that rushed or forced, but the sort that waited, growing stronger with love and time. It was the magic of true things, the kind that never fades, even when forgotten. Lily looked down at him. "It's happening, isn't it?" Thistle nodded. She smiled through a quiet tear. "I'm not scared." The pendant's light grew softer now, folding into itself like a flower at dusk. The mist began to settle, and the glow of the lily pad faded to a gentle shimmer. But something had changed. Lily looked into the water and gasped again. "Thistle, look." There, just beneath the surface, was a reflection. But it wasn't a frog's. It was a boy's face, soft and kind, with curls the color of dusk and eyes of amber gold. His expression was peaceful, full of wonder and warmth. Thistle looked too, blinking slowly. The reflection moved when he moved, smiled when he smiled. It was him, the prince. Still a frog in form, but not in soul. Lily touched the water gently. "You're still there." He croaked quietly. She leaned closer. "Maybe you don't need to become someone else to be whole again. Maybe just being seen is the beginning." Thistle felt the warmth of her words wrap around him like a soft blanket. The water rippled with agreement, and the pendant shimmered once more. They sat there together, the sky painting itself into twilight. No one spoke. No one needed to. The forest sang in low hums, the crickets tuning their tiny fiddles, and the pond pulsed with a rhythm all its own. Before Lily left, she placed her hand over her heart and whispered, "I'll come back tomorrow. I don't want to miss a single piece of your story." And Thistle, still glowing from within, watched her go, knowing now that his waiting had not been in vain. The pond had listened, the forest had remembered, and the spell, at long last, had begun to stir. That night, the stars seemed to hang lower in the sky, as though they too wished to peer into the heart of the quiet lily pond. The air was hushed, warm, and filled with the soft murmurs of leaves brushing together like secret lullabies. Beneath the surface of the water, something ancient had begun to wake, slowly, gently, as if yawning from a long and peaceful dream. Thistle remained on his lily pad, the crystal pendant resting beside him, its faint glow pulsing like the rhythm of a sleeping heart. Though his shape was still that of a frog, he felt different inside. Lighter, brighter. as if a part of him long lost had returned home and curled up beside him. In the woods, a soft rustle signaled Lily's arrival, but tonight she did not come alone. Trailing behind her, nestled in her arms, was a small bundle wrapped in blue cloth. Thistle tilted his head curiously as she approached. "I hope you don't mind," Lily whispered as she knelt by the water's edge. "This is Wren, my baby cousin. He couldn't sleep, so I thought maybe the pond could help." Wren, no older than a few moons, blinked up at the sky with wide, wonder-filled eyes. His tiny fingers opened and closed slowly, as if trying to catch the glimmering stars. "I told him about you," Lily continued, her voice a soft hum. "I told him about the prince who waits and the pond that listens." Thistle hopped closer, peering gently at the small child. Wren looked back and gave a tiny giggle, his eyes reflecting the pond's golden shimmer. Lily laughed quietly. "He likes you." Thistle gave a low, happy croak, and the water rippled in a circle of soft light. She placed Wren carefully on a soft bed of moss beside her and reached into her satchel. This time, she pulled out a new object, a little journal, its cover faded and corners worn from loving hands. "I found this last night," she said. "It was hidden in the attic, tucked inside Grandma's old trunk." She opened it gently, revealing page after page of handwritten notes and sketches, drawings of magical places, lists of forest herbs, lullabies in crooked letters. And then, near the back, Lily's fingers stopped. "This," she whispered, "is about the pond." Thistle's eyes widened. She read aloud slowly, her voice trembling with the weight of discovery. "The quiet lily pond was once watched over by a gentle-hearted prince, born of sky and cloud, who vanished beneath the moonlight. He was hidden from the world by kindness and time, waiting to return when love and memory found him again. His spirit rests in still water, and his name echoes in the reeds." Lily looked up, breath caught. "It's you." Thistle lowered his head slightly, overwhelmed but grateful. "Grandma knew," Lily said softly, "or maybe she believed that this place held something too precious to forget." She turned another page. On it was a single sentence, written in looping silver ink. "Only when the world hears the song of truth sung by a heart unafraid will the prince awaken." Lily traced the words gently. "A heart unafraid." She looked down at Wren, sleeping peacefully beside her. "Maybe that's what love is," she whispered. "Not magic spells or grand rescues, but the quiet kind, the kind that listens and stays." Thistle's chest swelled with quiet emotion. The glow from the lily pad grew warmer, spreading across the pond like a mother's hush. Even the pendant beside him shimmered with a softness that felt like remembering. "I think we're getting closer," Lily said. "I think the pond is ready." She turned to Thistle, her eyes glowing with belief. "What do you want most of all?" Thistle looked out at the water, at the willow branches swaying gently in the night breeze, at the stars watching from above. Then he turned back to Lily. He wanted to be himself again, not just in form, but in voice. He wanted to say thank you, to tell her about the butterfly and the riddle and the castle above the clouds. He wanted to share stories and sing lullabies, and, more than anything, he wanted to stay beside the girl who had listened. But the spell still held his shape, gently, like a hand reminding him to wait. Lily seemed to understand. She didn't ask for more. Instead, she opened her journal and began to write beside the old legend. She wrote, "He is still waiting, but he is not alone." Then she folded the journal closed and tucked it into her satchel. Before she stood to leave, Lily scooped Wren into her arms, kissing his soft cheek. The baby murmured sleepily and curled closer to her chest. "I'll come again tomorrow," she said, brushing a finger over the crystal pendant. "And the next day, and the next. We'll figure it out together." Thistle watched her disappear once more into the quiet trees, her silhouette framed in soft moonlight. He turned back to the water, where his reflection shimmered faintly. Not quite frog, not quite prince, but something in between. Becoming. The pond was full of promise, and the air hummed with stories waiting to unfold. And though he could not speak it, his heart whispered one word over and over like a lullaby to the stars. Soon. The next day arrived, wrapped in soft clouds that floated low over the treetops like sleepy pillows. A light drizzle had dusted the forest before dawn, leaving behind shimmering drops on every leaf and blade of grass. The pond looked as though it wore a gown of diamonds, each raindrop catching the early light like a tiny crystal. Thistle sat motionless on his lily pad, the pendant beside him, his eyes scanning the edge of the forest. His heart thudded gently, not from worry, but from anticipation. Every visit from Lily brought something new, a word, a song, a memory, and each time the magic stirred a little more. Soon, the familiar sound of her footsteps crinkling the leaf-covered path reached his ears. She emerged through the trees, her boots damp with morning dew, and a wide-brimmed hat shielding her curls. "Good morning, Thistle," she called softly, lifting a hand in greeting. Thistle croaked quietly, his joy small but strong. Lily knelt down at the same spot she always did, placing her satchel beside her. Today, it looked fuller than usual. She smiled and patted it gently. "I brought something different." From within, she pulled out 3 small wooden animals, hand-carved toys shaped like a fox, a bird, and a frog. "These were made by my grandpa," she said, laying them out carefully on the moss. "He said toys could carry stories if you played with them gently." She placed the frog next to Thistle with a little chuckle. "That one's you, of course." Thistle nudged it softly with his nose. Lily began to move the toys slowly through the grass, humming a tune under her breath. She made the fox and bird dance together, then paused. "Do you know what I think?" she asked, glancing toward the water. "I think stories are like bridges." She tapped the little frog toy with her finger. "They let us cross from one heart to another." Thistle stared at the wooden version of himself. In its simplicity, it was full of love. No gold crown or royal robe, just a frog carved with care. And that was enough. Lily pulled out her journal again, flipping through to a blank page. "I want to write your story," she said gently. "Not the one in the old books, but the real one. The story of how you waited and how you listened and how your heart stayed kind through it all." Thistle blinked slowly, his breath catching at her words. She dipped a feather quill into a tiny bottle of ink and began to write. "Once in a pond as quiet as dreams, there lived a frog with eyes of starlight and a heart that remembered who he was." The words flowed like water, soft and sure. As she wrote, the pond responded. The reeds swayed in rhythm with her sentences. The lily pads leaned in closer. The crystal pendant glowed ever so faintly, pulsing with her every word. And then something new happened. A ripple formed at the far end of the pond, slow, steady, and deliberate. From beneath the surface rose a single lily unlike any other. Its petals were white as snowfall, but with a faint blush of silver at their tips, and at its heart was a golden drop of light. Lily gasped. "It's blooming." The glowing flower opened wider with each passing second, as if the pond itself were taking a deep, peaceful breath. "It looks alive," she whispered. Thistle watched with wide eyes. He remembered that flower. Long ago, in the halls of the Sky Palace, it had bloomed only once each year during the Festival of Memory. It was called the Moon Lily, and it could only grow in places where love and time had walked hand in hand. He felt something stir deep inside him, like a bell ringing far beneath the water. The moon lily swayed gently, and from its center drifted a single golden petal. It floated through the air, carried by nothing but silence, until it landed gently in Lily's open palm. She stared at it, awestruck. "What does it mean?" Thistle gave the softest nod he could. He didn't know all the answers, but he knew this was part of the spell, a piece of the waiting, a reward for the love that had been given freely. Lily held the petal to her heart and closed her eyes. "I wish," she whispered, "for the prince to find his voice." The water around Thistle sparkled faintly. But the spell didn't break, not yet. Lily opened her eyes slowly, not disappointed, but peaceful. "I don't think the spell is about just one wish," she said softly. "I think it's about every wish, every whisper, every moment someone chooses to stay." She placed the golden petal into her journal, pressing it carefully between the pages. "I'll keep this safe," she promised, "just like I keep your story." The breeze picked up slightly, rustling the trees. The forest felt alive, not loud or busy, but attentive, like it too was listening to the rhythm of the pond. Before leaving, Lily added something to the wooden frog toy, a tiny piece of red thread tied like a scarf around its neck. "So you'll always have something warm," she said. Thistle nuzzled the toy gently, and for a moment, everything was still. The clouds above paused in their drifting, the reeds stopped swaying, even the dragonflies hovered motionless. In that pause, the pond whispered again, not in words, but in feeling. And in that feeling was a promise. The time was coming. Not far now, not far at all. The morning of the 8th day dawned with a golden hush, as if the sun itself had tiptoed into the sky so as not to disturb the gentle magic forming over the pond. A soft fog clung to the water, wrapping the lily pads in a silken veil. The world felt paused between breaths, a lullaby not yet finished, waiting on its final notes. Thistle sat at the edge of his lily pad, the crystal pendant glowing faintly beside him. The toy frog with its red thread scarf was tucked near the stone where Lily always placed her hand. The moon lily still bloomed across the water, its silver-tipped petals wide open, sending tiny motes of light drifting into the air like snowflakes that didn't melt. Today felt different. The spell had not broken, not yet, but it was trembling, like a dandelion puff before the wind or the very last page of a bedtime story waiting to be turned. Lily arrived without her satchel today. No journal, no drawings, no trinkets. She came simply, with bare hands and an open heart. Her curls were wild from the wind, and her cheeks were pink with the warmth of walking. "Hello, my thistle," she whispered, kneeling by the moss. "I didn't bring anything today." She paused, then smiled. "Because I realized you've already given me more than I ever thought I'd find." She reached out and touched the smooth stone gently, her fingers tracing the shape of the first letter Thistle had ever written in the mud, P. "I know you're still waiting," she said, "but I want you to know you've changed me too. Before I found you, I thought magic only lived in books and dreams. But now..." She looked around at the glowing pond, at the moon lily, at the mist that swirled in quiet spirals. "Now I know it's real, and it's gentle, just like you." Thistle watched her, every breath filled with a love he could not say out loud. The pendant beside him warmed, pulsing once with golden light. Lily took a deep breath. "I don't know how to break the spell, but maybe it's not about breaking anything. Maybe it's about trusting that the story knows when it's ready to turn the page." She closed her eyes and sat very still, listening. For a while, no one spoke. The birds sang softly in the trees, the water whispered to the reeds, and somewhere deep within the earth, the ancient magic of the forest hummed. Then Lily opened her eyes again and spoke very quietly. "When I was little, I used to sit by the window at night and wish for someone to talk to. Not just anyone, but someone who understood the quiet things, the soft things. Someone who would never laugh when I cried at stories or when I talked to butterflies." She looked at Thistle, "And I think that someone was you." The air shimmered. The pendant glowed brighter. And then the moon lily did something it had never done before. Its petals began to rise. One by one, they lifted toward the sky, glowing as if made of light. A beam of golden mist rose from its heart, arching across the pond like a gentle bridge. Thistle felt his whole body tremble, not with fear, but with release. Lily watched in wonder as the glow wrapped gently around her, and Thistle like a lullaby in light. Her eyes sparkled with tears that didn't fall. "Is this it?" she whispered. Thistle turned toward the water and looked again at his reflection. But this time, he didn't see the frog. He saw the boy he used to be. The prince with soft curls, amber eyes, and a heart still whole. His face looked back at him not through magic, but through truth. Lily leaned in closer. "You're in there? You've always been in there." The light grew warmer, and the water around the lily pad glowed as if touched by the sun. And then, very faintly, the breeze carried a sound, a voice. Small and hoarse, like a whisper finally spoken after being held too long. "Lily?" Her breath caught. She turned quickly, eyes wide. Thistle blinked, and again the sound came, this time just a bit clearer. Lily. It was not a croak. It was a name. Her name. Thistle's throat trembled. His mouth opened again. "Thank you." Lily's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes brimming. She knelt beside the pond, tears slipping down her cheeks now, not of sadness, but of awe. "You spoke," she whispered. "You really spoke." Thistle nodded slowly. He still wore the form of the frog, but it was no longer who he was. The magic had heard. The story had listened. And now his voice was returning, like a bird remembering its song. The glow from the moon lily began to dim gently, curling into the air like the last note of a lullaby. The golden bridge faded, and the pendant beside him cooled, resting now in stillness. But something had shifted. The spell was unraveling, not in one sudden burst, but in tiny threads of trust and time. Lily reached out and touched his little green hand. "I'll be here," she said through a trembling smile. "I'll be here for every word." And Thistle, the frog prince of the quiet lily pond, gave a quiet smile of his own, because now he knew he was no longer waiting alone. The ninth morning arrived with a soft golden hush. The clouds had cleared completely, and the sky above the forest stretched wide and blue, like a storybook waiting for its last page to be turned. Sunlight danced across the pond, catching on the mist and weaving rainbows through the air. Every blade of grass, every lily pad, every glistening petal seemed to shimmer with quiet joy. Thistle sat peacefully on his lily pad, watching the water sparkle. The warmth in his chest had not faded with the night. It had only grown. He could still hear her name on his lips, could still feel the shape of those first true words rising from his throat. Each syllable had felt like a new sunrise. He had spoken. Not much, not loudly, but enough. Enough to know the magic was listening. Enough to know the waiting was almost done. And today, Lily returned with the light of wonder glowing all around her. Her eyes were bright with joy, and her smile was so wide it could have lit the whole pond even without the sun. "Thistle," she called, skipping lightly across the mossy path. "Oh, my brave little prince." She knelt down beside the water and laughed softly, tears sparkling in her eyes. "You talked. You really talked. I heard you in my dreams all night. It was the most beautiful voice I've ever heard." Thistle gave a gentle croak, but it came out smoother this time, rounder, warmer, touched by something new. Then, slowly, he opened his mouth again. "Lily," he whispered. She gasped, clasping her hands to her heart. "Again?" He nodded slowly, and the pendant beside him glowed in response. "Thank you," he said, his voice still soft and crackling like the first flicker of a flame, but stronger now. Lily leaned close, her curls brushing the moss. "Can you tell me more?" Thistle hesitated, not out of fear, but because his heart was so full, he didn't know which story to begin with. But the forest helped him. The willow branches swayed gently, and the wind curled around them in soft spirals. The moon lily across the water shimmered again, and a hush fell over the trees. And so Thistle began to speak. In quiet, careful words, he told her everything. He told her about the butterfly with wings like dreams that led him away from the cloud palace, about the willow tree with bark that whispered riddles, about the kind old woman who didn't curse him with anger, but gave him a patient path instead, a path made of listening, of stillness, of love. He told her how he had waited, not in sadness, but in hope, how he had sung to the moon, watched over baby ducklings, helped turtles cross safely, and whispered lullabies to reeds that had forgotten how to sway. And then he told her about her, how he had first heard her voice floating through the cattails, how the forest had held its breath the moment she touched the water, how every step she took brought color back to a world that had been sleeping for so long. Lily listened, not moving, not speaking, just letting his story flow like the water around the lily pads. And as Thistle spoke, his voice grew stronger, steadier. His words wrapped around the pond like a warm breeze, and the magic within the water pulsed softly in time with every memory. "I didn't forget who I was," he said gently, "but I forgot what it felt like, to be seen." Lily reached out and touched his hand, her eyes full of tender light. "And now?" He smiled, truly smiled, not just with his eyes, but with his whole being. "Now I remember." Above them, the wind stirred the trees. Petals floated down from unseen flowers. The moon lily's silver tips shimmered like starlight, and the water began to glow again. But this time it wasn't just the lily pad or the pendant. It was the pond itself. A gentle light rose from the depths, soft, slow, shimmering like sunlight trapped in honey. The glow stretched toward Thistle, wrapping around him in delicate ribbons of golden mist. Lily stepped back slightly, not in fear but in reverence. The spell was moving. The forest grew silent, even the birds stopped singing. The water stilled, and then from the very heart of the pond a chime rang out, a note so pure and clear it seemed to echo through time. The light swirled faster now, lifting Thistle gently into the air. The golden threads of magic wrapped tighter, not to trap him, but to hold him like a mother's arms. Lily gasped softly, watching as his shape began to shift. His limbs stretched, slowly and smoothly. His skin glowed, then softened. The green faded into warm, sun-kissed skin, and the amber in his eyes deepened into golden warmth. His small frame grew, little by little, until there stood not a frog, but a prince. Barefoot, wrapped in light, hair like twilight curls, and eyes filled with stars. Thistle stood on the lily pad, now large beneath his feet, the crystal pendant hovering at his heart. Lily's hand flew to her mouth, tears slipping freely down her cheeks. Thistle. He looked at her, his voice now clear and gentle. Thank you for waiting with me. She laughed through her tears. I would wait 100 years for you. He stepped toward the edge of the pond, and the lily pad carried him, floating gently over the water until it reached the mossy shore. He stepped off barefoot, the pendant softly resting over his chest. Lily reached for his hand. He took it. And the moment their fingers touched, the pond bloomed. Hundreds, no thousands of lilies burst into blossom, white and gold and pale pink, their petals shining like stardust. Fireflies swirled around them like falling stars. The trees bowed slightly, their leaves whispering blessings, and the wind carried a song that no one had sung in a very, very long time. The spell was broken, but more than that, the story had awakened. The pond shimmered beneath the morning sun, alive with quiet joy. Petals floated on the surface like tiny boats, and the golden glow that had wrapped around Thistle still lingered in the air like the scent of warm bread. The spell was broken, but nothing had shattered. No thunder, no roar, just soft light, still water, and a promise fulfilled through love and time. Thistle stood beside Lily on the mossy bank, no longer a frog, but a gentle boy once more. His hand in hers was warm, and his eyes, those same amber eyes, held a peace that came not from being changed, but from being remembered. Birdsong returned, now sweet and playful. The reeds swayed in rhythm with the breeze, and a family of turtles peeked their heads above the water, blinking as if to say, "Is that really him?" Lily gave a soft laugh, squeezing Thistle's hand. "You look exactly as I imagined," she whispered, "only kinder." He smiled, shy but glowing. "I'm still me." They sat together at the edge of the water, watching the lilies drift lazily by. The crystal pendant now rested gently against Thistle's chest, no longer pulsing but steady, like a heart that had come home. It hummed quietly as if satisfied, and the moon lily across the pond remained open, its petals glowing softly in the daylight. Lily took a deep breath. "Will you stay here? Or will you go back to your castle in the clouds?" Thistle thought for a moment. The memory of that place, the floating halls, the star-painted ceilings, the warm hugs of his mother, stirred in his chest. He missed it, but it felt far away now, like a lullaby sung long ago. "I don't know," he said softly. "The clouds were beautiful, but this?" He looked around at the pond, the trees, the moss beneath their feet, and most of all, at her. "This is where my heart was healed." Lily rested her head on his shoulder. "Then maybe your kingdom is here now." They stayed that way for a long time, saying nothing, letting the stillness wrap around them like a lullaby. The forest didn't rush. The pond didn't hurry. The day unfolded gently, like a page turning all on its own. After a while, Thistle stood and turned to face the water. He stepped forward, kneeling down and placing his hand on the surface. The water rippled beneath his touch, and the lilies drifted toward him, circling like old friends. "I want to thank you," he whispered, "for holding me all these years, for keeping me safe, for listening." The pond shimmered in response, and the mist rose once more, swirling like silver ribbon through the trees. The magic hadn't left. It had simply settled, content and quiet, like a story well told. From the far end of the pond, the old turtle ambled closer, nodding slowly as he gazed at the boy. "You waited well," he said in his slow, steady voice. "Few ever wait so kindly." Thistle bowed his head. "I wasn't alone." Lily smiled. The turtles gathered around. The dragonflies danced above them. Even the elder willows leaned their branches closer, shedding soft blossoms that fell like snow. As the sun climbed higher, Thistle and Lily walked slowly around the pond, stopping to greet the creatures who had watched over him, one by one. He touched the shell of the old turtle, whispered thanks to the crickets in the reeds, and smiled at the birds in the branches. Everywhere he went, the pond responded with light, small flickers, like candles lit in celebration. And when they returned to the spot where it all began, Lily turned to him and said, "Do you want to write it down now?" Thistle tilted his head. "The story," she said. "Your real one." She pulled a new journal from her pouch, this one bound in soft green fabric with a gold ribbon wrapped gently around it. On the first page, in careful letters, she had written, "The Frog Prince of the Quiet Lily Pond," as told by Thistle and Lily. Thistle took the book into his hands, sat cross-legged on the moss, and began to write, not just with ink, but with heart. He wrote about kindness and how it could grow like lilies on still water, about waiting not in sadness but in hope, about the way magic is often quiet and how love isn't loud but steady. And Lily sat beside him, her head resting on his shoulder once more, her eyes closed in peaceful wonder. The sun dipped low, painting the pond in honeyed light. A gentle hush fell over the forest. The moon lily finally folded its petals, not with sorrow, but in rest. Its bloom would return again, in time. As night approached, Thistle closed the journal and looked out at the water. He knew now that his story wouldn't end with a spell breaking. It would go on, in the whispers of reeds, in the shimmer of the water, in every soft word spoken in the still of the forest, and in the hand that held his, steady and warm. Above them, the stars began to blink awake, one by one, and at the edge of the pond, where dreams meet the earth, the boy who had waited and the girl who had listened sat side by side, quiet, glowing, whole. And at last, the forest slept in peace.